Hi, and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann, and today I'm really excited to be a guest blogger over at PaperArtsy. And today we're going to do some card making techniques using grunge paste and Eclectica stamps. And the Eclectica stamps that I'm using are some that I've designed just for PaperArtsy, so I'm really pretty excited to share those with you. So hopefully after you watch today's video, you get a chance to stop on by the PaperArtsy website, and they're over at paperartsy.co.uk. And be sure and take some time over there because they've got a lot of really great resources from blog posts to video tutorials. I really hope you enjoyed today's segment on using grunge paste and Eclectica stamps. Grunge paste is a texture medium, and you can use it through stencils or to create a smooth or a rough effect on paper or even canvas. And it comes white, but it can also be tinted with the Fresco finish paints. And even better, you can also stamp with it, which is what I've done on the front of my card. And you can see here in this top corner, as well as the opposite bottom corner, these circles have been stamped with Fresco finish tinted grunge paste. I've also used it for stamping up here in the corner and as well for going around the outside edge of my cardstock piece here. And this just helps to create some frames within frames as well as adding a distressed effect to my card. Now the stamps that I'm stamping with here are from the Eclectica line, and these are from PaperArtsy, some stamps that I've designed for them. And I think you can see better the circles here on the stamp set. Well, those are the same circles that I've stamped over here. And once we get into the demo, you'll be able to see that much more clearly. Now this little texture bit up here at the top corner is this little guy right down here. And this is a piece of corrugated cardboard that I stamped and then did some distressing around the outside edge to give you a really nice texture stamp to work with. Now the other things that I'm stamping with on here, of course you'll see this nice great big card focal quote on here. All of my new Eclectica stamp sets have quotes on them, so if you know me well, you know that I love my quotes, and I just couldn't resist from adding them on here. And I really like this one, Hope is a Waking Dream from Aristotle. So that's my card focal on here. Now this piece here is a really beautiful script design, this whole great big border on here. And this is actually some Dutch handwriting, very old. It's part of an old ledger that I discovered in a flea market in Amsterdam. And I thought you might like to have that as a border piece. And I think it stamps beautifully. You can see on here how beautifully that stamps onto a Fresco finish painted background. So lots of different layers, lots of different techniques going on this card. So let's get started. Let's start with this bottom layer here on my card. You can see where I've got the paint and I've got some of that grunge paste as well as some stamping along the edge here. And I'm starting with just a piece of craft cardstock, so nice sturdy weight, and I'm going to add some texture around the outside edge using Lake Wanaka. And this is one of the PaperArtsy Fresco Finish Chalk Acrylic paints. I love these paints, and not only because of the colors, but also because of the opacity. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about this because I think it's something important to note when you are choosing your paint colors. So you can see in little tiny letters down here the word opaque, and then a little swish of that blue paint on here. Well, this shows you the opacity, and the word opaque, of course, tells you that it is an opaque paint, which means that it will give you really solid coverage on whatever you're painting. So for contrast, you can take something like London Bus, for example, and you can also see little letters down here, translucent. So this is a more translucent paint. It will show things through. So you can see this little swish of paint where those black lines are. Well, the same black lines are also printed onto this label, but you can't see them because, of course, it is opaque. So that's another good way to gauge. Now, if you're somewhere in between, they have semi-opaque as well, and this is the blush. And you can just barely see the lines under here. So barely seeing the lines, definitely seeing the lines, and not able to see the lines. So semi-opaque, translucent, and opaque. So one of the things that I discovered when I was using these paints, and just thought I'd pass that on to you. So I'm using my Lake Wanaka. I'm going to get my plastic painting palette here, and I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of this onto my palette. It's a very runny paint, which makes it a lot of fun to play with because you get the wonderful opaque coverage, but at the same time, you don't use a whole lot of the paint. Look how runny that is. Then I'm going to apply it with my stipple brush, and this is one that I have from Faber-Castell. It's for their gelatos, but I use it for lots of different things. And I'm just going to tap this on here and then drag it along the edge of my cardstock, all four sides, to create a frame. And I think you can see as I'm swiping this on how opaque it is in some areas, and then of course with the brushes how it gets dragged out a little bit. But it is a very matte paint. It is a very high level of opacity, which makes it really nice. Beautiful coverage. So then I just need to take this and let it set aside to dry. While this dries, I'm going to grab a piece of white cardstock and do the same thing here. So again, just going around all four sides and really getting a nice frame along the outside edges. And then I can hold this up so that you can see and lift it off from that white background a little bit. So I've got my white piece and then I've got my craft piece, and then I can start stamping. I want to add a little bit of texture and dimension using this big, beautiful script stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that using the Jet Black Archival ink, and this is from Ranger. This is one of my go-to black ink pads. I use this for almost everything, and it works beautifully in combination with detailed stamps like this. So I've got my script stamp mounted up onto one of the flexi blocks from PaperArtsy, and I like this because I think you can see how thin it is. It's nice and lightweight, but it works beautifully with big stamps like this one. So you can see in proportion to my hand, it's quite a large stamp, and sometimes when you get those really big blocks, it becomes a bit of an unwieldy process. So I like the lighter weight of these. So I'm just going to position my cardstock here on a piece of scrap paper because I'm going to be stamping off the side. And then I'll just go ahead and ink up my stamp. And then go ahead and position this down here on the side. Going off the side, press that down firmly. Always make sure that you put your big stamp in the middle of your block so that you get equal leverage. And then I'm going to lift that off, and I think you can see how beautifully detailed that stamp is and how nicely it stamps even onto the painted area there. So I'm just going to give this another minute to dry on that non-porous surface where the paint is, and while that's drying, then I'm going to grab my piece of white cardstock and my grunge paste and start mixing up something so that I can do some stamping there. I'm going to mix up my grunge paste now and add a little bit of color with some mushroom paint. So if you've never worked with grunge paste before, let me just pop off the lid and show you what this looks like. It's got a really interesting consistency. It's not like a gesso. It's a little bit wetter consistency or runnier consistency, but it is a really cool texturing medium, and it's going to give us lots of really interesting texture as we're doing stamping with it. So I'm just going to kind of mix this up a little bit and get some of this onto my high-tech palette here, just a little bit of it. And using my palette knife, this is really the best tool I've found for working with the grunge paste. Then what I'm going to do is make sure to put the lid on right away because this dries really quickly and I don't want it to dry out. So I wanted to tint this with a little bit of color. I like kind of the off-white sort of natural color of it. But for this, I wanted to tint it with mushroom. Now, mushroom is an opaque paint, as you notice down here at the bottom. What I found with this paint is that it is the one that I use the most often. And it's kind of surprising because it's not a particularly bright or notable color, but it is super, super versatile. So let me show you. It's kind of almost a pink pearly color, but it's got a little hint of purple in it or rose. It's just a really unique color and very interesting. So I've just put in a little bit of it and mixed it in here with my grunge paste using the palette knife. Now, one thing I think is interesting is that when you mix the grunge paste with one of the Fresco finish paints, it doesn't compromise the integrity of either one. So you still get the same consistency of the grunge paste. You don't get it extra runny or really watery. It's the same consistency that way. But also look at the color. Color is the same between what's in the bottle and what's on here. So the grunge paste is not diluting it as heavily as you might think. It's actually remaining quite true to its color, which I think is nice. Now I've got this piece that I've already done my stipple painting on here, going to put it onto a piece of scrap paper once again because I'm going to do some stamping off the edge. And I have my circle stamp on one of the flexi blocks. I'm going to take my palette knife and just tap a little bit of the grunge paste on here. And using a tapping motion, I'm going to apply the paint and grunge paste on here. Don't want to glop it on so much. I don't want to stamp this into my grunge paste, for example, but I just want enough on here so that when I stamp this going off the edge and I lift it off, then I'm able to get some of that texture. And I think as I'm moving it, maybe you can see, certainly when it dries and you touch it, you'll be able to feel the texture on there. And that's the wonderful thing about the grunge paste, is that it does give you that tactile effect. So I'm going to come back again with my palette knife and more of that grunge paste, and then simply do it in the opposite corner, lifting off, and then I have a really beautiful, very interesting top and bottom, side to side, a really nicely balanced piece that has beautifully stamped grunge paste on here. Now, one thing that I want to point out, I'll set this aside to dry, but you'll notice on my stamp, I still have a lot of that grunge paste on there. It's not good to let this dry. Remember, the grunge paste does dry really quickly. So what I like to do is keep a shallow bucket or container of water on hand. And then what I can do is just simply pop off the stamp and pop it into my water. You can tell it's a little bit cloudy because I've already done some soaking with this. And then when I get a chance, I can go ahead and wash that off, but I don't have to worry too much about it drying on there. So then I'm going to go ahead and use the rest of my grunge paste to add a little bit more stamping and dimension onto my other piece of paper. So I still want to use up the rest of my mushroom tinted grunge paste, and I want to do a little bit more stamping and then also some edging on this piece as well. So I'm going to use this little scuffy stamp here, and this is the one on the stamp sheet that looks like this. So it's some really nice fine lines with a little bit of scuffy edging on there. Once again, using the palette knife, and I'm going to use a kind of a light tapping touch on here. I don't want it to be too gloppy because those lines are pretty fine. So again, working back here with my craft sheet with the stamping on here and then that paint, I'm just going to pop this down here in the top corner, and you can see how nicely those lines come out. And then again, add a little bit more of that grunge paste, a bit heavier handed, and then come down here at the bottom. So if you wanted to, you could also use this stamp as a continuing type of thing, and you could stamp more of that pattern on there as well. And then again, I'll just pop that stamp into my bucket of water so that it can soak right off. Now I do also want to add a little bit of edging on here, again using the palette knife. And what you can do with this, it's really interesting, loading up your palette knife, kind of like edging cardstock or paper with an ink pad. So you can either get a very fine edge by going perpendicular to the side here, or if you want a heavier handed application, go at a bit of an angle with your palette knife. And just going around the outside edges here like so. All four sides, going to kind of come around here and maybe get a little bit more. Again, you can add as much or as little as you want to. And being careful not to put my finger right into that grunge paste, come along here. Now again, it doesn't take very long for this grunge paste to dry, but what I like to do is actually pop this up onto something, and then the edges can dry out of the way of anything that it might stick onto. So then you're just going to go ahead and let this part dry, and then we're ready to start assembling the card. Now that I've got all of my parts and pieces grunge pasted and painted and dried, I can go ahead and assemble my card. And it's a very simple card assembly, as you can see, really just using some black and white cardstock to mat and help each of those layers stand out on their own. So I stamped Hope is a Waking Dream with jet black archival onto white cardstock, and that's really my focal piece. So I've matted it onto black, and then I used foam tape to attach it to this painted and grunge pasted piece. And I've offset it a little bit because I really wanted these circles to show and for that to be kind of a tactile piece there. And then I put it onto our background craft cardstock with the beautiful script stamp on there, matted that onto white and then onto black. tied a knot in a piece of checked ribbon just to give a little pop of color with that red. And I love red and blue together. I think it looks really pretty. And then pop the whole thing up onto the front of my blank white card. Super easy to do and a whole lot of fun as well. So this is how you can do stamping with grunge paste using the Eclectica stamps and supplies from PaperArtsy. And I want to say a big thank you to the fine folks at PaperArtsy. You guys are amazing. And I hope for those of you who are watching, you can take a few minutes or maybe more than a few minutes once you get going to pop on over to the PaperArtsy website at paperartsy.co.uk. It may take you more than a few minutes because they have got a lot of really cool things and a ton of great ideas and videos as well. So you can pop on over and see their grunge paste, their Fresco finish paints, and of course the Eclectica stamps. I really hope you enjoyed today's show. Of course, for more ideas and inspiration, you know you can always stop by my place at saranaumann.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, where I will keep you updated with new videos every single Wednesday. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you again next time.